Shalom Aleichem, Mishpachim. It is nighttime and I am reading the Onkelos on the third Aliyah of this Torah portion of Vayeishev. We are in the third Aliyah, and let us begin. Let us begin. Starting with verse 23 to verse 36. And this is Vayeishev and Bereishit, Genesis, chapter 37, verse 23 through 36. Let us begin. Torah up here, Onkelos below the line down here. All right, verse 23. It happened that when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped Joseph of his robe, the robe with sleeves on him. Verse 23, Onkelos. Robe with sleeves. The verse repeats and emphasizes the robe since that was what provoked the envy and hatred of Joseph's brothers. Rashbam, Radak, and Chazkani. Verse 24. Torah. They took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty. It had no water in it. Verse 25, Torah. They were reclining around the table to eat bread. They lifted their eyes and saw, behold, a caravan of Arabs was coming from Gilead, their camels bearing gum, resin, ladanum, on their way to take it down to Egypt. Verse 25. Verse 25. Onkelos. Try to get it clear. They were reclining around the table. While the Hebrew has seated, the Aramaic pictures the brothers eating in a reclining manner, as in chapter 27, verse 19, and chapter 43, verse 33. The Roman practice at the time of the composition of the Targum. The biblical wording here contrasts startlingly with that of Judges, chapter 21, verse 2 and 3, where the tribes sat until evening before God and wept mightily for killing members of the tribe of Benjamin. The Targumic rendering softens the implication of the biblical word and term sat, the latter implying that they had no concerns, regrets, or bad feelings about their treatment of their brother. 9 of the brothers gathered. Reuben and Benjamin were not there. Arabs. Onkelos and the Saadia Gaon replaced Scripture's Ishmaelites with the more generic term Arabs, here and in verses 27 and 28, either because the biblical Ishmaelites were more popularly known as Arabs during the period of the Targum, or to clarify that the Midianites mentioned in verse 28 were not different than the Ishmaelites. They were the same Arabs mentioned here. Verse 26. Torah. Judah said to his brothers, "What money would we gain if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" Verse 26. Onkelos. What money would we gain? The Aramaic gives the sense of the Hebrew word betza. What would we achieve? Verse 27. Torah. Let us go and sell him to the Arabs. Let not our hand touch him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. His brothers accepted this from him. Verse 27, Onkelos. Accepted this. The Targum clarifies the biblical metaphoric idiom of heard, as in chapter 23, verse 6, and many other verses. Verse 28. Torah. Midianite traders passed by and pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver to the Arabs. They brought Joseph to Egypt. Verse 28, Onkelos. Joseph's brothers sold him to the Midianites, who are the Ishmaelites mentioned in the prior verse. The Saadia Gaon, Radak, Bechor Schor, and Ibn Ezra see commentary on verse 25. However, Rashi, Chazkani, Sforno, and Rashbam contend that this was another caravan. The Ishmaelites sold Joseph to the Midianites, and the brothers were not the direct cause of the sale of their brother. Verse 29, Torah. Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, whereupon he rent his clothes. Verse 30, he returned to his brothers and said, "The youth is not here, and I, where will I go?" Verse 30. Onkelos, the youth, is not here, and where will I go? Onkelos does not give the reason for Reuben's emotional reaction. The Saadia Gaon adds, since the youth is not here, Rashi elaborates, I will run to escape seeing father's pain. The unnecessary, almost stuttering repetition of linguistically articulates Reuben's emotion. Ibn Ezra, see also commentary on chapter 41, verse 10. Verse 31, Torah. They took Joseph's robe, killed the male goats, and dipped the robe in the blood. Verse 31, male goat. The Targumic insertion of bar is the usual Aramaic way of translating seir, izim, and adds nothing to the meaning of the Hebrew noun. The brothers chose goat blood because of its resemblance to human blood. Verse 32, Torah. They sent the robe with sleeves and had it brought to their father. They sent, we found this. See if it's your son's robe or not. Verse 33, Torah. He recognized it. He said, this is my son's robe. A wild beast devoured him. Joseph has been killed. Verse 33. Verse 33, Onkelos, killed. My son has been killed. Onkelos softens the graphic and gruesome biblical description of Joseph's apparent brutal death, torn to pieces. Verse 34, Torah. Jacob rent his garments, bound sackcloth on his loins, and mourned for his son many days. All right. Was that 30? That was 34. Bound sackcloth. The biblical meaning, he placed sackcloth. Contrary to his treatment of verse 33, our Targumist is more graphic here because the depiction is not negative. Many days. Many commentators see Joseph's absence from his father for 22 years as a tit-for-tat punishment for Jacob's having absented himself from his parents for the same period. Rashi calculates that Joseph was 17 years old when he left his home to seek his brothers, 30 years old when he was appointed viceroy of Egypt. Chapter 41, verse 46. 37 at the conclusion of the 7 years of plenty, and 39 when Jacob relocated in Egypt. These 22 years corresponded to the 20 years when Jacob resided in Laban's house, and the 2 years it took him to return home. Chazkuni asks why Jacob should be punished for his absence when his parents themselves instructed him to go to Laban's house. He supposes that Rebekah sent her wet nurse to bring him home, and he refused to return. Verse 35, Torah, and all his sons and his daughters rose to comfort him, but he refused to accept comfort. He said, no, I will go down in mourning to my son, to Sheol. So did his father bewail him. Verse 35, Onkelos, daughters. Scripture mentions that Jacob had only one daughter. Why does it use the plural here, as mentioned several times in previous commentaries? The Bible frequently uses the plural when the singular is intended. However, others take the text literally to refer to daughters-in-law, or to Dinah and Serach, the daughter of Asher, who is mentioned in Numbers chapter 26, verse 46, or to other daughters of Jacob, twins of Jacob's sons, whom they married, a Midrashic view reported by Rashi. Accept comfort. Onkelos refashions scriptures, allow himself to be comforted, to accept comfort, because of the context. His children were attempting to comfort him. To my son, the Saadia Gaon, Rashi, Bechor and Chazkuni read El too as Al. Concerning, and there are Onkelos texts that have such a reading. 2. Chazkuni and Sforno explain Jacob was certain that he would be punished. That he would be punished because of his behavior concerning his son, for he was responsible for sending Joseph to his brothers. Sheol. This is the biblical term for the abode of the dead, the grave. The same term is also mentioned in chapter 42, verse 38, and chapter 44, verse 29. His father. Rashi identifies the father as Isaac. who cried because of Jacob's troubles. But Rashba maintains that it refers to Jacob, who bewailed the loss of his son for a long time. Verse 36, Torah. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him to Egypt, to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the chief executioner. Verse 36, Onkelos, Midianites. See commentary on verse 28. Official. The Targums generally render the Bible's word eunuch, official meaning as eunuch, as rab official, except in Isaiah chapter 56, where the context of the verse requires a literal translation. See also Genesis chapter 39 verse 1 and chapter 40 verse 2. Chief executioner. The Hebrew literally means chief slaughterer, since the word slaughter only applies to the animals. Rashi describes Potiphar as Pharaoh's chief animal slaughterer, Mizrahi. However, all of the Targums and the Saadia Gaon take it as a metaphor for the senior human executioner. Its usage also in English. It is used in this sense in Daniel, chapter 2, verse 14. Radak, Chazkuni, and Nachmanides agree, the latter stating that slaughter is also used for human execution in Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 21, and Lamentations, chapter 2, verse 21. The reader also can see in chapter 40, verse 3, that Potiphar supervised the prison and was, therefore, probably also in charge of prison executions. Why did Joseph not inform his father for 22 years that he was alive? The Midrash Tanhuma imagines that Joseph's brothers threatened him. We will let you live on a condition that you swear you will never reveal to anyone who you are or tell father that you are alive. Joseph chose life and kept his promise. Onkelos highlights chapter 37. How do we know that Targum Onkelos was written around 400 CE? An opinion that is contrary to the views of most scholars. Israel Drazen, co-author of this volume, examined every Aramaic deviation that the Targumist made from the normative understanding of the original Hebrew biblical text, and compared these Aramaic translations with the explication of the Bible found in the early Midrashim. He discovered that the Targumist consistently embraced the rendering, and in many cases the actual wording, of the Midrashim, especially when the Midrash presented the Pshat, the revealed Torah, the simple, overt meaning of the text. The Onkelos Targumist never translated contrary to the Pshat contained in the Midrash, and he evidently used the final edited version of every one of the extant Midrashim, since the final versions of the Midrashim were not completed until around 400 CE. The Onkelos translation could not have been composed before this date. Neither could it have been composed much later, because, as recorded in the Talmudic rabbis had already forgotten who wrote it. All right. And I believe that is the third Aliyah. All right, let us read the daily wisdom on the Parshiot of the Lubavitcher Rebbe on this portion. We are in the third Aliyah. I just read chapter 27, Genesis, chapter 37, verse 23 through 36. I'll begin. Joseph's brothers sold him as a slave to a caravan that brought him to Egypt. The title of this wisdom on the Parshiot is called, We Cannot Be Enslaved. The brothers sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. The Torah considers our firstborn sons to belong to God, requiring us to redeem them from him by paying 20 silver pieces, 5 biblical shekels, to a descendant of Aaron, the first priest. This rule, which is still practiced today, is meant to remind us that everything we possess really belongs to God, and that, therefore, we should use all our possessions for holy ends. In addition, the redemption price of 20 silver pieces is meant to remind us how Joseph, Rachel's firstborn, was sold as a slave for that price. Yet, despite the sale, Joseph was never truly enslaved. For, as God tells us, the Israelites are my servants. On account of our inviolable bond with God, we can never be truly enslaved to anyone else. The redemption price of the firstborn is thus fixed as the price for which Joseph was sold into slavery. This teaches us that both we and all we possess belong irrevocably to God and can never be enslaved to any other master. All right, and that is the Torah reading, the daily wisdom and the Torah reading on the Parshat of Vayeshev. All right, have a wonderful night. Laila Tov.